Welcome all. Appreciate your joining us for this first webinar of 2018. And I'm going to be talking today about, in general, why taking a platform approach to acquiring managed attribution technologies is important, and really any cyber technology and some of the benefits, but specific to managed attribution, why it makes a difference and what kinds of requirements you should be looking at, what sorts of asks, what things to be considering when you're putting together a set of requirements and building a platform around it. So for thousands of years, there were fundamentally two domains of conflict. There was the land and the sea. And that really went back through history. In the 20th century, we added a couple of more, right? We brought in air with fighter planes with the Air Force and space. And those have also become fairly mature at this point. And we have systems and processes around how we interact, how we acquire capabilities, how we deploy them, and how the different domains work with each other. And now we've got cyber. Cyber is the new kid on the block, and it's really far from mature in terms of how we understand it, how it fits in with the other domains, how these capabilities integrate across different organizations and between the different domains of conflict. And the situation we have, I mean, imagine if we were acquiring air capabilities. And in the United States, we've got fighter jets, but the soldiers, the airmen in Africa are using some sort of a Citation jet. In Australia, they're stuck with a weather balloon. In South Africa, they've got biplanes. It's sort of this crazy mismatch of capabilities. No planner would really be able to guess ahead of time what capabilities would be available. None of the parts are going to work together, right? It's going to be chaos. Unfortunately, that isn't how we do it. Right now, if we're looking at the air domain, we're buying airplane platforms. They've got standardized weapon attachment points. We've got programs for building and acquiring the weapons, fuel, repair, parts, pilot training, crew training, maintenance, ongoing upgrades, capability improvements, right? All of this is built into the thinking about how do you acquire one of these air platforms. Unfortunately, it is exactly that weird chaos in the cyber realm still. Everyone's buying their own kinds of tools, their capabilities, the platforms, what sort of hardware, what sort of servers, where the server's hosted, what operating systems. Right? They're going out and having a lot of the tools built on a customized basis to meet exactly their requirements. But it means that every group has a different set of tools and they don't interoperate. And being trained on one set of tools doesn't help you with the next set of tools. And in particular, when you're looking at building these things out in a customized way, you're running on thin ice because they tend not to be stable, right? You don't have the technological maturity of the products to be able to adapt to changing environments, to make sure it's been debugged across all the different kinds of situations you're going to run into. And that can cause a lot of problems for when you actually need to take this and deploy it into a real world scenario and use it, you're suddenly going to discover, you didn't think through some issues and things will break, and it causes all kinds of problems. It also causes problems at the planning stage, right? How can you strategize about things like cyberfire if every single unit or region has different technology, different tools, different capabilities? There's no ability to have confidence that the particular set of tools and capabilities that you're going to need to prosecute some action will be there for you and be at hand and deployable. You know, if you're thinking about if a planner is planning an attack on some location, and let's say that they're going to be an air domain situation, they're going to be deploying bombers. The planners could be coming from any part of, say, the DoD. They understand, though, exactly what weapons are available, what are their capabilities, what's their range, how fast can they be deployed, how many of them are available, how fast can they be reused, right? All of that's very well understood. If they want to then include the cyber domain as part of that capability, they want to say, how do we prepare the ground ahead of time with certain kinds of cyber engagement, either intelligence gathering or degrading their capabilities? the planner really doesn't know. Is it in place? Do I have the tools in advance? Do I have the capabilities? Have we laid this kind of groundwork in advance? Do we have points of presence? Do we have accounts in the right places, or platforms, or standoff capabilities? Or how long would it take to put those in place? Right? None of that's standardized yet, and that's causing a real problem. So what you want to end up with is a platform that is standardized, it's maintainable, it's modular, and it's extensible. And it's important that it be based on the operational concepts and doctrines, right? That needs to lead the technology, as opposed to what we often see is that the technology leads the doctrines. You say, oh, I have this cool tool, let's think about how I could use it, rather than saying, what the kind of engagements do I want to be able to have, and then make sure that the platform supports those kinds of activities. And finally, thinking of it from a platform perspective, looking at all of the different pieces at once really helps with the finger pointing problem, because we've seen time and time again where each different element of a solution is provided by a different vendor, it's built at a different time, it's deployed separately, different groups are managing it. And when a problem happens, as it always does, no one really knows who owns that and how to manage it. Whereas if you've acquired things really from a platform perspective, you're much more likely to be able to get everyone on the same page. You understand exactly where the boundaries of responsibility lie, who is in charge of or responsible for each different element, and can allow you to work much more effectively. So that's all kind of generally about cyber, but now let's drive down into managed attribution. So when you're looking at managed attribution, I think it's important to be thinking about this platform as being able to support a number of different missions. And you could see some of those in that poll that I just ran. You want to be able to take the same set of capabilities, because there's a lot of commonalities, and use them for OSINT, right? Going out to open source location, publicly available data, and viewing that information, doing large scale scraping of the internet, right? Sucking it down, doing big data types of operations far beyond what a human could do at a keyboard. You may be wanting to go in and investigate something in detail, get into darker corners of the internet, find out what's going on, or even be directly engaging with people, right? Setting up long-term identities on the internet that allow you to get into invitation-only forums, create relationships, interact with people on an ongoing basis. But each one of these requires a similar but distinct set of capabilities in your managed attribution tool set. But you really want to be able to move from one to another, all within the same platform, and have it be extensible. So even though your mission maybe starts with only one of these, in 2 years, it could be expanded. You don't want to have to then go and re-engineer everything to get that capability. But you want to be able to move smoothly from OSINT to investigating, to research, to active engagement, up, web harvesting, whatever you need to do, without having to start from scratch, retrain everyone, do all that kind of thing. When I look at what a platform needs to entail, there's really 3 distinct elements. There's the technology, discrete procurement and management of the infrastructure, and techniques, tactics, and practices. Most of the people we've talked to spend almost all their time thinking about the technology end of this equation. Right? They're focused on what are the tools out there, how do I technologically hide my identity? And that is important, and you obviously need those. But the other 2 pieces then get neglected, and without looking at all 3, you can really have the system fall down, massive cost overruns because you forget about certain aspects of this. And so let's take a look real quickly at what all 3 of those elements are. So from the technology side, again, people are usually first looking at just the anonymity capability. I want to have something that allows me to go on the internet and not be identified, either to be totally anonymous or to be pseudonymous, to have some false identity on the internet. But when you're engaging, you're often going out and poking hornets' nests. You're going and visiting people who really don't want you there. And so security is also critical, right? All of our systems should be fairly secure. These systems need to be extremely hardened. Right? We need to be anticipating in advance that we're going to be seeing sophisticated attacks back against us by angry opponents. Also be thinking about automating a lot of tasks. Particularly things like OSINT can be incredibly repetitive activities. And so you've got some smart analyst or operator there. They've got a lot of domain knowledge, but yet they're spending all of their time just clicking and saving and printing to PDF or whatever over and over and over again. Automating those tasks can be a huge force multiplier for you. So integrating that into the technology stack um, allows you to get so much more done with the team you've got and really be much more effective against your mission. And then management is another piece that often gets overlooked because you need to be keeping track of what your users are doing. Where are they going? Are they following their guidelines? Are they being effective? You want to be able to have measurements of effectiveness. You want to make sure no one's going off the reservation. You need to be able to have that kind of oversight and compliance capabilities, which if you just grab off-the-shelf anonymity tools, these can work very much against each other because the anonymity tools, unless they were designed for exactly this kind of mission, often block any gathering of that kind of oversight capability. So when you're looking at this as a platform, you need to have all of those things meshed together and working together so that you can have that oversight while making sure that your targets can't see who you are. You want your managers to be able to see everything. So discrete services, discrete procurement. It's not enough for your IP address to be hidden so that when you go someplace, they can't see where you're coming from, that it masks your browser fingerprint. There is always something that's visible. There's always going to be an address and a fingerprint that's seen by the sites that you're visiting. And the question is, how did those get acquired? Right? If they were just bought by you, or if they were bought by a provider like us directly, that may be problematic because that then undoes a lot of this anonymity. Someone looks back and says, oh, well, that's a big government vendor. That's going to be a problem. And boom, the whole thing unravels almost immediately. So in addition to providing anonymity for the cyber activities, we also need to be doing all of the other activities in a discrete manner as well. So when we're going out and acquiring points of presence that your traffic's going to come out of, that may need to be done in a standoff way. We may need to be managing how does the financial flow happen and making sure that's not attributable. When we're making phone calls to set up the accounts, where do those come from? And depending on what your requirements are and the threat model you have for the targets that you're going after and the consequences of being exposed in any way will determine how deep that tradecraft around the discrete acquiring of services is. But it's important to have that as part of it. And it's going to be an ongoing thing because there's always new things that need to be acquired because the capabilities you have eventually need to get replaced. In fact, sometimes quite often. And the third pillar is the tactics, techniques, and procedures. And we see this as an ongoing iterative process where you're continuously researching the capabilities that are out there, developing new solutions to support them, and then training your users in what those are. What new OPSEC requirements does that suggest? And then iterate that, because unlike the ocean's largely been the ocean for a long time, and ships evolve, but the time to develop and deploy new ships, the time over which the threat landscape of the ocean changes is long. The timescale on which the internet environment changes is ridiculously short, right? There's new software, there's new capabilities, there's new platforms, protocols, websites, social media that are popping up all the time. And so you are continuously needing to make sure that you stay ahead of that, iterate your solution to support those, and then make sure that gets wrapped back into the actual users so they can leverage it effectively. They understand what are the social norms on this new thing. And so that's where the ongoing R&D capability comes in. When you're building the platform, you need to make sure that either you or your vendors are setting aside the time, funds, effort, skill set to be doing this ongoing research to find out, what's the new slang that they're using in China? What is the new chat app that they're using in Africa? What's the new encryption protocol that they're using in South America? What's the new social media that all the young kids are using in the United States? And is that on a phone? Is that on a laptop? Is that through a game system? where are they using it? How are they engaging it? Which apps, which protocols? Is it web-based? Is it not web-based? Because you want to make sure that you look like a digital native and fit in with the population that you're trying to engage with. Right? You don't want to stand out in any way. And so that's a continuous process. We've seen a lot of new requirements for machine learning, automated translation, because so much of the world has now gone online. They're very much at parity with the United States now. Multi-factor authentication support, because so many websites now are moving towards multi-factor. The ability to do SMS, online messaging, mobile devices, app-based communications. It's not at all a static environment. So making sure that you're tracking those trends and staying ahead of them so that your platform will be ready is critical. Make sure you've got the budget and the resources to do that. And then because of this dynamic environment, the people you trained 2 years ago no longer have current skills. So think about, how do you make sure that all of your teams are getting continuously updated knowledge and understanding of the technologies, the tools, and the environments that they're going to be working in so they can stay ahead of that. It's a complicated world, and the rules are, like the technology, like the platforms, constantly changing. So making sure that they're getting that updated knowledge and cycling back through to learn the things that your R&D team has discovered and the new capabilities that have been built into the tools, then get into your operators. And of course, they'll see new things that'll cycle back into the research. So let me give you an example of the kind of learning that we've seen, because I think it's sort of an interesting case. We had a customer, and they needed to be looking like they were in a particular part of the world. So we'd set up this non-attribution system from them. It's not, in fact, where this pin is set, but they had a large group that was operating. And so we set up a point of presence there, and everything was going great until one day we get a phone call. And this customer is very upset because they say they're supposed to be coming out of this one location, but in fact, Google knows that they're where they really are, which is also not where that pin is, just because OPSEC. But Google was correct about where they were really located, and this was a huge crisis for them, right? What happened to our misattribution? What happened to our anonymity? And so we started investigating it. Was there a technical breakdown? Was there some leakage? Was there some network information that they were able to get at? And we were finally able to demonstrate that it was actually a human mistake. It was an OPSEC failing, but not one that anyone would have been thinking about. The people were using this misattribution platform for personal use in addition to their operational activities. So if they needed to schedule a haircut, they'd hop onto Google and Google haircuts. If they needed to order a pizza, they'd do that. If they needed to look at a map to work out where to go to a bookstore, they'd pop that up. And Google's watching that. And no one had ever noticed that Google was watching that before. Because if you look at Google and Google tells you you are where you really are, that's not surprising. But when Google knows where you really are, when all of the technical indicators say you're somewhere else, that says something interesting is going on. They were looking at the average location of the searches coming out of that block of IP addresses, and were able to say, oh, they're looking for things all over the world some of the time, but the most common location they're looking for is exactly where they were physically located. So we're going to make the assumption that's where they are. Boom, pin lands right on their base, and therefore the problem. Once we understood that, then we were able to do that iteration. We could create a solution to automatically flood Google with information suggesting that these people were interested in the area where they're supposed to be. And we were able to bring in training to help the operators understand that it was problematic to be using any of these non-attributed operational tools for personal uses, not just because it's unofficial and it's not, an allowed use, but more importantly, because it is in fact breaking their cover and damaging their mission effectiveness. And so that's an example of the kind of loop you see going around. Is you learn it, you update the platform, you improve the technology, you train the users, and then they're able to go back into being fully functional and looking like where they're supposed to look like they are, who they're supposed to be, and get the information, do the activities that they're supposed to be engaging in. There's also a lot of efficiencies with having a unified experience. So I talked about the importance of having the platform support the whole range of different mission types. That's important because it then gives you the same user interface across all of them. So once you've trained the users, they understand the OPSEC, they understand the tools, they know what they're supposed to be doing. When they move from mission to mission, from tool to tool, if it's the same look and feel, they're much more likely to be able to get up to speed quickly, require less training, but more importantly, make fewer mistakes. Because it's the human error that almost always is the thing that breaks misattribution, breaks your anonymity. And so the less new interface aspects and the less new requirements placed on the user as they move from location to location, from mission to mission, the less likely you'll have things break. Similarly, for your IT team, managing the servers, having the same platform means they're already familiar with the technology. They're not having to juggle 8 different heterogeneous stacks that have different sets of requirements. So that allows you to have much better security, stability, uptime with a smaller staff. And similarly for the administrators, you could have one user account list, you can have one dashboard, one set of information with all of your oversight and compliance requirements all in one place. You can also get system level security from this kind of platform approach, because each one of the elements, even if independently it was designed in a secure way, you still have the problem that at every point of interface between them, there's a potential for vulnerability. Right? That's almost always where vulnerability happens, is when one system is touching another system. If you've acquired them separately, the builders didn't know how they were going to interact in advance, and you're stuck with trying to patch on some kind of security after the fact. Whereas if you'd bought the whole system as a single unit, you can then build the security and architect the security at that level, build it in from the start rather than trying to patch it on at the end. And that gives you a much higher level of effective security for all of your systems, for the whole package. I touched on this earlier, but really important when you're putting this together to think in advance about planned replenishment. IP addresses in this case are almost like bullets. You're expending them on a regular basis. When you go out and then on some kind of a mission, there might be a one and done, right? If you're doing something that's pretty high threat, you may never be able to go back and reuse that again. You always need to be starting something new. But even if it's less sensitive than that, after a while, your patterns of behavior, like with that Google example, can start to make your block of addresses, your block of identities look abnormal, right? If you've got a bunch of researchers coming out of some IPs and they go and visit this set of terrorist websites at 8 a.m. Eastern time every weekday, that's not normal, right? Normal users don't have that kind of regimentation, but it's quite typical of what an analyst workflow might look like. So those IP addresses will start to be poisoned just because of the patterns of use that they've been exposed to, because every website you touch is gathering information about your behavior, right? Every time you use any app, the provider of that service is gathering data, and they'll be able to see these kind of strange patterns emerging. So turning over what social media you're using, what IP address, what browser fingerprint, right? All of the different pieces of information, what geolocation you're coming out of, is important to staying ahead of that. So plan that out, understand how are you going to be using these capabilities and what does that say about how often you need to replenish it, and make sure you're staying ahead of that. Because if you suddenly realize that you need a new point of presence in a hard to get country, it's probably too late, right? You need to have had that pre-staged well before the actual requirement, the actual mission lands. And all of this really leads to one of the biggest benefits of the platform approach, which is predictable costs, right? Once you understand all the different moving parts, you've thought through all of the contingencies, you understand what kind of ongoing capabilities and improvements you're going to be doing, you can wrap your head around what is the total cost of ownership of this in a way that's not going to cause heartburn and surprises for the people up the chain. And so that's really my argument in a nutshell for why it's important to have a platform approach to managed attribution and some of the things to be thinking about when you're putting together those requirements. Don't just focus on the single piece of technology. Look at the full suite of all of the pieces of technology, as well as the discrete procurement and management of the infrastructure and tactics, techniques, and procedures, training, software updates, and research that beneficial loop that needs to take place. And I think you end up with then better results, lower cost, a more reliable and portable set of misattribution capabilities. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your attention. And now I'll open it up to questions. Is the data I collect on attribution exportable to other organizations? Certainly the data that we're collecting in terms of the oversight of users and seeing where people are going, that's specific to given customers. And we, with our internal systems, make sure that we don't keep track of that. But that's very portable information. In terms of the data that other websites are collecting about attribution of users, who they are, what the patterns of activity are, they may or may not be inclined to share it. I mean, one of the interesting things about Google is they do reflect it back to you just because of the nature of their service. So when you engage with them, they're trying to be helpful, right? If you type in pizza, they want to show you your local pizza restaurant so you see it. Other websites likely have the same kind of information that they're gathering, but they're much less likely to share that back to you or make that visible to you. And this is valuable proprietary information, so they're largely not sharing it unless there's some contractual relationship. There's all sorts of websites that do, for example, geographic location information about IP addresses. So you can go in and type in an IP address and it'll tell you where it is. And originally they did that just looking at address registrations, right? So when you set up a server, the IP address is registered, or when you're using your home internet, those IP addresses are registered to some company and there's some address associated with that, which typically isn't yours. It's like the corporate headquarters of Verizon or something. And so that system was very ineffective. It was inefficient. These days, most of that information is actually coming from partnerships with retailers. So the retailers are watching people buy books, music, whatever, and they then capture both the billing address of the credit card and the shipping address that they're delivering things to in conjunction with the IP address that the user is coming from, and then they share that with these location service providers. And in return, then they also get to subscribe to the data so that they can look for fraud, because one of the most common forms of fraud is the IP address is coming from one country, but the credit card's in another, and the shipping's in a third, and the ability to spot those kind of incongruities is important in detecting credit card fraud and things like that. So there's a very rich market in these sorts of things, and in fact, the bad guys are doing this too. There's a website was active last time I looked called Who's a Rat, and it's actually a service that tries to identify law enforcement and similar kinds of people by IP address, by identity, so that you can automatically filter them out of your service. So if you've got some chat room for criminals, you want to make sure that no one who's visiting you is law enforcement and be able to automatically filter that out. All right, well, I see we're actually over time by a couple of minutes. I really appreciate everyone's attention through this entire webinar. Would really appreciate your feedback on the very short questionnaire at the end to understand how we can try to make this better. And also we've got some handouts for you that talk about sort of misattribution, some links to some blogs we've written on this issue, as well as some white papers that we encourage you to take a look at afterwards. Thank you very much.